White House warns of consequences if Ukraine aid lapses. The Hill. The White House on Tuesday warned of the potential fallout if Congress does not pass additional aid for Ukraine after assistance for Kyiv was left out of a short-term government funding measure. John Kirby, a White House spokesperson on national security issues, told reporters that a lapse in military and financial support for even a Below are your comments. We had 4 long years of no wars and Biden get in and we're back to status quo. Again, America boasts the largest national debt in terms of dollar amount. We are literally borrowing money to send to Ukraine. How about the Biden administration employees donate their pay? Now that may encourage others to donate. But to continue to fund for nobody knows how long is not going to happen and it shouldn't. Here are the consequences of a lapse in money for the Ukraine. They will out Joe Biden from whatever they are holding over his head to blackmail him with. I say no more American taxpayer money for them. Let's hear what they have to say. No more money for Ukraine. Americans are suffering and we do not have the money to give them. We are in a $3 trillion deficit. Let Europe deal with this and pay their fair share. Next news. U.S. aid to Ukraine may hinge partly on who takes over as House Speaker. Reuters. Speaker Kevin McCarthy's ouster on Tuesday could signal a shift in the U.S. House of Representatives on aid to Ukraine, with some of his possible successors strongly in favor of assisting Kyiv but others staunchly opposed. The House voted for the first time on Tuesday to remove its leader, as 8 of McCarthy's fellow Republicans voted with 208 Democrats against him. There was no immediate indication of who might succeed McCarthy, but the next speaker could quash Ukraine aid before a pro. Below are your comments. McCarthy's ouster may influence aid to Ukraine in the House. Ratings from Republicans for Ukraine suggest potential outcomes, but the future speaker's stance remains uncertain. Be first to catch the stocks, go free stocks us. We need an F there to get Congress to work for America first and end endless wars. The vast majority of MAGAs will vote against whatever the Democrats vote for, despite it being better for the Ukrainians. And that is how they vote on every issue, not just Ukraine. That is why we are in this situation. Let's hope we get a reasonable Republican in there who can get things done. Next news. Biden calls allies amid push for more Ukraine aid from Congress. The Hill. President Biden convened a call Tuesday with other world leaders who have backed Ukraine in its war against Russia as the White House seeks to offer reassurances about its support for Kyiv despite Congress failing to approve more aid in recent days. Biden spoke with leaders from Canada, Germany, Japan, Italy, Poland, Romania, the United. Below are your comments. While our military is strained for equipment and ammo, Biden sends it all to the Ukraine along with more dollars that are not accounted for. Secretary of Defense stated our military is now strained and very short on many things. What happens if China decides to go into Taiwan? We do not have the it. Problem is actions taken by Biden to date have not stopped the war. There is no end in sight. Russia just increased their military spending for next year by 70%. So from Joe's perspective, he needs to continue funding the war and hope Ukraine wins or go down in high. Story as the POTUS who failed. Please wait a moment. Only things politicians can agree on is they should all be in for life, always fund war and vote the themselves raises. Biden will do anything to keep his foreign monetary supply intact after he built it for so many years. The big guy speaks. Notice this admin never talks about ending this war but only about providing more and more U.S. taxpayer money. Next news. U.S. ready to quickly send ATACMS missiles to Ukraine after Biden's approval. Ukrainska Pravda. The U.S. Army is ready to send Ukraine long-range ATACMS missiles equipped with cluster munitions as soon as President Joe Biden approves the transfer. Source: Bloomberg details. This was stated in an interview by Douglas Bush, the U.S. Assistant Secretary of the Army for Acquisite. Ion. Below are your comments. Being cautious and hesitant, out of fear of provoking Russia, will only slow down Ukraine's advances. The money used for Ukraine is the best thing we have done in 50 years. Ukraine is a secondary concern to the U.S., where now 2 million people invade the border per year and have one of the worst debt-GDP ratios of developed nations. It is utterly disappointing that the U.S. government is not battling that and the many issues that ail the country today but continues to do it already. Next news. Biden assures NATO and G7 allies of ongoing U.S. support for Ukraine. Ukrainska Pravda. On the morning of 3 October, U.S. President Joe Biden had a phone conversation with the leaders and foreign ministers of U.S. allies amid uncertainty about ongoing military aid for Ukraine. Source: a statement by the White House cited by the TV channel CNN, as reported by European Pravda. According to the statement by the Biden administration, the participants in the call were the leaders of Canada, Germany, Italy, Japan, Poland, Romania and the UK, the Foreign Minister of France, the President of T. Below are your comments. Biden should have said, "The U.S. will continue to support Ukraine in the war with Russia as long as I am president and not for as long as it takes." Look at the other countries. The voters are deciding when to end this war. Zelensky is blackmailing Biden. He knows where the bodies are buried at Burisma. Biden assures NATO and G7 allies of ongoing U.S. support for Ukraine. Biden is not the dictator of the U.S. If the senators wanted to support Ukraine, they can look into their own closets. 1 or 2 kilos of gold, maybe. $400,000 to $500,000. I don't have the kind of money laying around, so please give it all to Ukraine. They will love you for it. And they will make statue for you. Next news. A pro-Putin populist's success adds to fears of Ukraine war fatigue. NBC News. Robert Fico's election victory in Slovakia was a boost for Vladimir Putin and a blow to Ukraine as racks begin to show in the West's support after the U.S. budget deal. Below are your comments. Pro-Putin, or pro-Russia, as opposed to pro-Western and so on. In other words, much of the MSM say, all Putin has to do on this is just keep it going. We will eventually cut the funds and then it's done. We really don't have the money for any more of these wars. That's called democracy. It's okay with me, I accept it. I am not sure what all this politicians are implying. Please, correct me if I'm wrong, but on February 24 of 2022 Russian forces attacked Ukraine and invaded its territory. A lot of people were bleep. Russia destroyed some cities almost completely. Now, people asking Ukraine to stop the war in. Next news. F-16s are no magic bullets in Ukraine, but their armaments will matter. Defense News. If Ukraine's F-16s are expected to strike ground targets, they will require the right munitions. Below are your comments. Time is not on Russia's side. F-16s will arrive soon, as well as ATACMS, and a lot more cluster munitions. The Ukrainians are able to hit Russia's naval and air assets anywhere in Ukraine, and almost all of Russia. Muscovy's economy, the size of a U.S. state, is collapsing, despite Putin's lies to force Putin to negotiate? That will never happen. Russian troops will need to be removed from Ukraine. Next news. Biden tells allies Ukraine support strong amid Congress chaos. Bloomberg. President Joe Biden reassured allies U.S. support for Ukraine would continue, seeking to ease worries after a government funding bill omitted $6 billion in aid. Most read from Bloomberg. Key Taiwan tech firms helping Huawei with China chip plants. Wall Street fear gauge ratchets up after jobs data. Markets wrap. Kevin McCarthy ousted as U.S. House Speaker by Republican dissidents. Why a U.S. recession is still likely and coming soon. Airbnb is fundamentally broken, its CEO says. He plans to fix. Below are your comments. The only support they are getting after the cuts is moral support. Yes, with people that got payments from Ukraine or other Ukraine investors. Oh, it is investing. We could have bought an entire continent for what we have given them already, so someone is making money somewhere off all this. When did the U.S. vote to take care of all other countries before taking care of ourselves? This is ridiculous. Glory to Ukraine. The traitorous Putin-loving McCarthy just got kicked out of the Speaker of the House position. The Democrats overwhelmingly kicked him out of office. Whoever replaces McCarthy won't dare mess with Ukraine aid. They need Democrat support to keep their job. Next news. Russian troops cede ground and strike back, frustrating Ukraine's counteroffensive. The New York Times. As Ukraine's counteroffensive has rumbled forward in recent months, it has encountered minefields and forces dug into elaborate trench networks. Ukraine's forces have also run up against a Russian tactic of ceding ground before striking back. Reports on Monday illustrated the issue. Russian forces said they had staged an assault on Ukrainian troops on the front line in the Zaporizhzhia region, while Ukraine's forces said it had repelled the attacks. Rather than holding a line of trenches et al. Below are your comments. Question. Is the objective of the Russians to gain ground or destroy the Ukrainians? Most of the so-called think tanks say that the success is measured by the ground gained. However, it seems that this is not the Russians' objective. Destroy as many of the enemy troops as possible. It will lead to the s. Anyone following this war knows this is how Russia has been operating since last winter. Next news. U.S. sends démarche calling on Ukraine to double down on its fight against corruption. Ukrainska Pravda. In recent weeks, the United States has called on Ukraine to increase its efforts to fight government corruption, linking them to further non-military support, including through a diplomatic note. Source: CNN with reference to U.S. officials, as reported by European Pravda details. CNN's sources emphasized that all forms of American assistance, except military aid, could be threatened unless Ukraine does more to overcome corruption. Below are your comments. Makes sense. I support Ukraine, but I am not blind to its issues. I hope that Ukraine does well in reforms and becomes a strong NATO member. U.S. sends démarche calling on Ukraine to double down on its fight against corruption. How come the U.S. refuses to audit how funds and weapons being sent to Ukraine are being used? I mean, come on, folks. We won't give them cash because they are corrupt, but we'll give them bombs and guns? How does that make any sense? Joe is getting upset. Some players have not been paying the 10%, and that is not acceptable. Makes you wonder why the Democrats fought tooth and nail against audits of where our aid money is going. Next news. A deal to expedite grain exports has been reached between Ukraine, Poland and Lithuania. Associated Press. Ukraine, Poland and Lithuania have agreed on a plan they hope will help expedite Ukrainian grain express. Officials said Tuesday, with needy countries beyond Europe potentially benefiting from speedy procedures. While the stated goal is to hasten Ukrainian grain exports, the agreement may also help diffuse tensions over grain prices between Ukraine and Poland, a time when some international support for Kyiv's efforts to throw back Russia's invasion may be fraying. Agricultural exports have br. Below are your comments. See how easy that was. Ukraine wanted to take control. Seems Ukrainians are similar to Russians, control and demand with TTLE to offer. Sorry, I support Ukraine, but not as strongly as I did prior to learning about the thievery. Great. Now who is going to work in Ukraine? Since millions of patriots left their country for a better life. Poland gets grain, Ukraine gets weapons and support. Easy peasy trade-off. This is wonderful news. Goes to show you how resilient Ukraine is and how irrelevant Russia's threats are. Go Ukraine. Next news. Amid House chaos, Pence urges Republicans to continue Ukraine aid. HuffPost. As fellow Republicans blew up House leadership across town, the former vice president urged his part. Why to stand up to Putin and continue assistance to Ukraine? Below are your comments. Pence is making sense. Freedom is our fight. Glory and arms to Ukraine. Trump solicited and then accepted Russian dictator Vladimir Putin's help winning that election. He then sided with Putin over his own intelligence agencies on the topic of Russia's election interference. He repeatedly derided and undermined NATO, with a second-term goal of withdrawing from the all. Pence was the here in Indiana and I for one didn't care for him. But in absolute agreement with him to keep supporting the Ukraine 100%. Not a Penske fan in any shape but one of the only Republicans showing any actual leadership for the country. The rest are all focused only on themselves. Next news. Hillary Clinton. I don't understand any American siding with Putin. The Hill. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, said Tuesday she doesn't understand Americans who support Russian President Vladimir Putin in his war against Ukraine. I don't understand any American siding with Putin, but we've seen it and we've heard it and we have to fight against it, Clinton said in an interview with PBS NewsHour. Below are your comments. Where's the accountability on the money we already spent? McCarthy said. Please wait a moment. Vietnam War, how did that turn out? Bad except for the military contractors. Iran-Contra, how did that turn out? Bad except for the military contractors. Kuwait War, how did that turn out? Bad except for the military contractors. Next news. Bloomberg. Hungary wants to cut EU funding to Ukraine in half. Kyiv Independent. The proposal adds weight to fears that international support for Ukraine could be waning following U.S. lawmakers' decision to remove aid for Ukraine from a government spending bill passed on Sept. Below are your comments. The EU needs to change their rules. Letting dysfunctional countries like Hungary set the agenda is nonsense. They should cut the funding to zero. In fact, they should demand a refund of whatever was already given. More than half of what was given went to a few billionaire oligarchs. With NATO dismantled and Ukraine absorbed, Putin will be free to have his way with Poland, the Baltic, Romania and beyond. Hungary, Slovakia and other accomplices in Russia's war crimes will hardly be spared. Good that someone has their head on right and wants to keep checks and balance in place. Should Hungary read some books about the 1956 Hungarian Revolution? Next news. Ukraine's foreign minister sure U.S. support for Ukraine won't stop despite elections. Ukrainska Pravda. Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba reiterated his belief that the United States will continue to provide assistance to Ukraine despite the internal political processes and the upcoming presidential electi. On. Below are your comments. That support will be over soon. Negotiate peace before it's too late and knock down those Bandera monuments. Cut off support 100%. Biden must pay off the oligarchs in Ukraine for hiring Hunter. It's just pathetic how these foreign countries demand American tax dollars and feel entitled to our money. Ukraine needs to solve their own issues with Putin. Please wait a moment. Kuleba is now lying to himself. That is not good. Next news. Pentagon warns of strain on Ukraine support. We need Congress to act. The Hill. The Pentagon on Tuesday warned the U.S. cannot sustain support for Ukraine too much longer without additional funding, urging Congress to act on a new aid package. Pentagon Deputy Press Secretary Sabrina Singh said the U.S. has $5.4 billion left to pull from Defense Department stocks and $1.6 billion available to replenish its inventory. Below are your comments. That's the point. No more support without a decisive win strategy and democratic governance restored. When is the Pentagon going to bail out the United States economy? Why throw good money after bad? Russia will win sooner or later. Ukrainians are doomed anyway. Please subscribe to my channel. And if you like it, please thumbs up.